What's up, fifth period? I'm trying this again and I don't know what happened, but I thought I must have had something go wrong. So if this works, who cares? We'll get it for the record. So I'm going to make this super short because most of what we're doing right now is individual. I don't have a big new thing for the class. I've been looking at each person's project, and if you've turned in anything at all, then I've made an individual video for you saying, here's what you got, here's what you need, etc. Some people are doing great and they've got each step full credit or close to full credit, and other people are stuck on the early parts, but it's not too late. You can keep going and I'll keep doing examples. But the next step, if you were ready for the next step, would be, so we got our objects and they're moving and they're colliding. The next step would be spawning and despawning. Maybe you have an enemy that dies and we need to make it go away. Maybe you have projectiles that get shot and we need to have new stuff appear. Because whenever you start the game, you have certain objects on the screen, but it doesn't stay with that group forever. It might add some, delete some, etc. And this really gives us an opportunity to be creative and efficient because you're not always really creating new stuff. You're saying like, oh, with Space Invaders, if I shoot one of the enemy ships and it disappears, I don't have to leave it and I don't have to create a new one when a new enemy pops up. I can just have that guy disappear and then reappear. You know, I can have that same enemy pop up 3 seconds later as a new enemy, and we'll never know. The user can't tell. They're all the same, right? Or if I'm shooting projectiles, I don't want to create a new object every time. I can shoot one, and then when that one hits its target and it's done its job, I can just have that one reappear and do it again. So often the spawning and despawning thing is like a way to creatively reuse stuff. It's like when you're, you know, a year or two ago I took my English class to see Macbeth, and they didn't have a new actor for every single part. They had some actors play the witches at the beginning, and then 10 minutes later those same actors would show up and be like, you know, the king's guards or whatever. You're reusing stuff in new roles when they're not needed on stage at the moment. So that's a fun thing. Anyway, the current grade, the collision, is our first assessment grade because it's kind of a harder thing. It's kind of a bigger thing, and it's a nice, like, alpha version. It's like once you get your movement and your objects and your collision, that's the basic bit of game where you can actually say that it can kind of work. And I'm grading that in a way that if it does work, I'm okay with it. So like if you've got code that is pretty ugly and it's dependent on the specifics and it's not very generalized yet, that's okay. If I can hit run and your game works, then that's a good start. With our example of breakout, we had, you know, the ball goes up and bounces and it hits a brick, and there are a couple ways to code that. You could just say if it hits these certain coordinates where the brick is, because you know from other parts of the code, then it bounces and then the brick goes away. Ideally, you don't want the ball to be depending on, you know, hard-coded specifics like that. You want the ball to run a function where it like asks, are there any bricks in the list that we're touching right now? If so, we're going to move, we're going to tell them to disappear, etc., etc. But in order to set that up, you would need a couple different steps, which I've been showing in my examples. But if you want to start by just saying like, if it gets to these coordinates, then it's going to bounce, that might let you hit run and see something work. And then you can replace that with better stuff, more generalized stuff as you go. So I'm going to cut this video off. Again, I'm doing this for the second time. I don't know what happened the first time, but I don't want it to make it long. And what we're going to do is I want your input for what our next example should be. So we're working through our steps, and I've showed Pong, I've showed Breakout, I've showed a platformer. I've showed a Space Invaders type thing. At least the beginnings of it. We'll need to do another step or two to get it really good. What else should we show? We can do I was thinking of a pool game, a billiards game, where you hit the ball and it bounces off the other balls. That would require a lot of physics type stuff where you have to find the angle. Or do you? Maybe it's always the same angle. Maybe it's always the right angle. I haven't checked. And then you have to, take into account friction and things like that. Might be kind of fun. Or somebody was doing pinball, and I thought, oh, maybe we could do a pinball, which is really nice because it's probably the code for Pong. You got a ball bouncing around and a paddle, and yeah, the paddle tilts, but it's the same thing. Plus the code for a platformer where you have your guy falling due to gravity. You probably just put those together and you got pinball. So let me know. Whatever you guys think, we'll use as our next example if it's possible to do in 2D with rectangles and circles, and we'll go from there. Thanks.